Hello, I'm Bruce Brockman, and I'm going to share with you what I knew about Linux, what I learned about Linux, and some of the good things and some of the bad things. This is for a presentation for the NEOPC, Northeast Ohio PC Users Club group on November the 12th, 2014. Linux. And I've entitled this presentation, The Confessions and Consternations, plural, of a Linux newbie. And newbie to the extent I played with it about 10 years ago and decided that Windows was a better option for me at that point. But always have kept up with Linux a little bit. Not nearly enough, I've learned, but a little bit. And when I say consternation, I mean strong feelings of surprise or sudden disappointment that causes confusion. Yes. So, the big three. Whose operating system does not belong on this page? And we're talking about the biggest, the best, the greatest. Not that guy. Not that guy. But Linus Torvalds. He wrote the first version of Linux in 1991. Today, 95% of the world's 500 fastest supercomputers run Linux. All the top 44 fastest are running Linux. Worldwide today, Linux on PCs is 1.61%, not very many, but it's growing. Smartphones, 79.3% of the smartphones, and that's growing also, in the world are running some form of a Linux operating system. Servers, where all the information is stored out on the cloud and in companies and at the government and so on. Wherever information is stored, the servers are running Linux, 60% of them. And it's used in routers and smart TVs and CD, DVD, Blu-ray players and automobiles in many different ways in automobiles. NASA, the Russian military has their own version of a Linux operating system, and so on, as well as many of the major computer manufacturers offer a Linux-based computer in their line. And why is Linux used so much and grown so well and all that? Two main reasons. First one is it's free. Free is always good. Most of it is distributed under a general public license. And because there are so many different versions of it, you have a lot of, and we'll call them eggheads at this point. No disrespect meant, and that's for sure. But there are a lot of people that get their kicks in working on these things. And if you have a problem, they're more than happy to work on your particular problem. So that's one of the reasons that this thing is growing so much free. When you're selling something commercial and you can get free parts for it, it makes sense. And from a user standpoint, if there's a whole community of very bright people out there that want to help you, try calling Microsoft. Okay, so really the reason that this presentation was put together is back when Microsoft announced that XP would no longer be supported by them, after doing some brief reading, I decided to tell the club that it was a good idea for members that had old XP machines to move to Linux. And this is a Google search I did, XP to Linux, and you'll see it got 60 million hits. So there are a lot of people writing about it, talking about it, thinking about it, doing it, and so on, and I thought it was a good idea at the time. Probably is. Or maybe it isn't. That's that consternation again. As this presentation goes on, you're going to see that there's a little red star up in the upper left-hand corner. And when we get to a page like that, you're going to see a screenshot of a web page. And that red star means that a link to that page will be available on the NEOPC forum in the Linux presentation. There are going to be about 35 links here in this presentation. So again, as you look at this video, and if you see something that you're interested in or that you want to know more about, if there's a little red asterisk up in the corner, that means that you can look up the link to that particular item. First one is XP home users should upgrade to Linux, not Windows 8.1. Well, that actually is pretty obvious, because machines that run 8.1 need a lot more horsepower than machines that run XP. But there are an awful lot of people that have an old XP machine that still can get an awful lot of use and without a lot of expense. In most cases, virtually none. So, this one says, why Linux Mint is a worthwhile Windows XP replacement. Yep. Although it depends, and we'll talk a little more about that. And this one says how to upgrade from Windows XP to Ubuntu. Cheapest way to upgrade from XP. Ubuntu is the largest, although Mint is growing on it, version or distribution of Linux. There are updates and new versions of this brought out all the time. They support these things for years, and the updates are free, and in a lot of cases they're automatic. They aren't trying to sell you a new version like Windows 9 that never happened, or 10, or the new Animal for Mac. It's just when they've got some new neat stuff put together and they've answered some more questions and added some more things, they just make a new copy, an upgradable copy, available. Okay, Windows XP support ends today, and that was back in April. Here's how to switch to Linux, and here's a whole article on that. This is a nice little website, How to Geek. Extremely well done. Alright, distro. You'll hear that term talked about when they talk about Linux, and that means it's a distribution, which means it's a version. And there are lots of versions of Linux based on what you want to do with your computer. So that begs the question, which one should I choose for my computer? And there's a list of things that you should think about before you choose a particular version, a particular distribution of Linux. How old is your computer? What CPU are you running? And we'll talk about that a little more further on. Basically, you really do need to know whether it's 32-bit or 64-bit, and there'll be a link here to help you with that. How much RAM do you have? And that's a really good question, because I'm going to show you a version that runs out of RAM. It doesn't even get installed in your computer. It just runs on the RAM in your system, and you need at least 256 to run that particular thing, that particular distribution. If you don't have 256 gigs of RAM, if it's a great computer and you can upgrade it, do that. Other than that, it's probably time to trade it in. Not going to be much help. Do you like new things? And if you're a Windows person, it's quite a bit of new things. If you're a Mac person, it's some new things. Are you going to have two operating systems? And Linux installs fairly quickly alongside your Windows if you want it to. I'll show you my presentation computer, this little old 8-year-old netbook is running two operating systems. Are you running short on storage space? And Linux, when you're running a live CD or off of a USB, you can store on that. You don't even have to have a hard drive. Do you want to spend time learning? And there is going to be a learning curve, and depends on what you want to do, and could be a little bit and could be more than that. What do you want to do with this computer? And that ties right in. You know, if you're just going to go on the net and do some email and write a couple letters, fine. You can use a very small, easy to use distribution, and if you want to do other things, then you use something a little more complex. How much peripheral equipment do I have? Easy for you to say. And we're talking about printers and cameras and a variety of things that you attach to your computer through the USB ports. That used to be a lot more of a problem than it is today for Linux. And what are your basic computer skills, and what do you want them to be? If you don't want them to be any more than they are today, and you're willing to spend just a little bit of time resurrecting that old computer, you can do that. Or if you want, if you've got a new shiny new computer and you want to add a second operating system to it to do some unique things, questions you have to answer before you figure out which distribution of Linux you're going to want to run. This is, as I mentioned, and here's that little star, so there's a link to this page in Wikipedia. If you scroll down the page, will tell you which processors are 32-bit and which ones are 64-bit. 1970 from 85 back was 16, 85 to 03 was 32, and 64 since then is the basic on that. But again, you can scroll down here and you can learn whether your particular CPU is 32 or 64. When in doubt, run the 32. Okay, so revive your old PC. The 3 best Linux systems for old computers. And a good article, again, How to Geek. Another article, 6 cool Linux distributions to review on your old PC and laptops. And again, just somebody else's thoughts on which ones to use on old machines. Now this one is about the best distributions for new users, easier to deal with, which in some cases coincides with the other thoughts. This one is the best ones, the best desktop. And desktop is what you see on your desktop, and they're talking about ones that look an awful lot like what you're using today, whether it be Windows or Mac. The 7 best current ones for 2014. And this one, 10 most popular Linux distributions compared, and this article goes in side by side and compares the pluses and minuses of probably one of the 10 that you would choose if you're going to choose one. But my choice has been for a really old computer. This one runs out of RAM. It's an extremely small system. The ISO file is 130 meg, all of which gets loaded into your RAM, and it runs fairly nice, and it's pretty popular. Obviously, this was a Google search for Linux Puppy, and there were almost 3 million hits for that. So it's a good one, and I'm going to show you and talk about it a little more as we go on. So let's talk a little more about Puppy. This is their main web page, and this is where you can find the download for it. And Puppy is a little different than most of the distributions, and it's because it's so small. You have to run originally from a CD, and then you can put it on a USB flash drive. So you need a live CD, and a live CD means that it can actually run the operating system. Your computer can run from that CD. Once you're running Puppy, then you can insert a thumb drive, a USB thumb drive, and put Puppy on the thumb drive. And basically that's where you store, whether it be your email or things that you create or videos that you want to keep or whatever it is that you want to store. You can then store it on the thumb drive, as well as you could store it on the CD, DVD if you so choose. Up to you. Most of them you can basically put the Linux distribution on a thumb drive, and we'll talk about that a little later in the presentation, and start running the Linux distribution from the thumb drive. In this case, Puppy Linux, you need to run it the first time from a CD, and I'm going to have some CDs available for those of you that are adventurous and would like to try this later on. Very extensive website, very active group that would be more than willing to answer any questions you might have. I'm really quite impressed with Puppy. For as small as it is, it runs extremely well. And because it's running out of your RAM, it runs much faster than having to retrieve the information from a hard drive. So, homepage for Puppy. And when you load it up, this is what your desktop looks like. It also barks at you twice when it opens, which is kind of cute. Anyhow, it's semi-familiar to most of you as far as there's a taskbar down here, and this is your audio volume. This one is your connection, internet connection. This one actually shows a battery status. This is your firewall, and this one shows the amount of storage available. I was running that off of a very small thumb drive when I took these screenshots, so that's why it's showing red. Typically that would be green as you move up. That means you have a lot of storage. Start menu type button here, and that'll pop up some things. Files, this is like your Windows Explorer. Help, and we all know what that is. If you're used to running a Mac machine, you'll know why you see a version of a hard drive up there. Some pretty normal things up here. This is a program pre-installed for writing, very similar to Word. This is very similar to Excel. You have a painting program and a drawing program. You have a email program. Browser, when you click on that, it gives you a choice of what browser you want to get, and you can go out and get it, and it will install it for you. Calendar, playing music and videos, pretty normal stuff that you would see. These are more familiar to those of you that run Mac, Apple. This is the dreaded console. Now, a console is a DOS window, and that's where you can put in changes to the program. Scares most people, and with most of these distributions anymore, you don't have to do anything with it. You can, if there's something unique that you want to do, and you typically can find instructions on the internet, very explicit line-by-line instructions. But again, you don't have to use it. That's what scares most people about using Linux, is having to do some programming, if you will. This is just a close-up of the icons that are up on the desktop. Like I say, the names are familiar. Perhaps the icons aren't, but the names are familiar to most of you. Most of the names anyhow. So, one of the things is Puppy Package Manager. And a package is a program. It's like what you see as an executable program, an exe. And when you open up the Puppy Package Manager, these are programs, packages that were designed specifically for Puppy. And you can see over here that as you click on these buttons, these programs for the desktop, programs for the system, utility programs, file system, graphics programs, documents, business, personal, network, so on, so on, so on, so on. Down here it shows you what programs have been installed that I've actually put on here. See this bottom one, Python. I was trying to figure out how to get Dropbox on here so I could share files with my other computers. And because Puppy is so small and skinny, it didn't have a programming language. We'll call Python a programming language as part of its system, and I had to install that in order for Dropbox to work with Puppy. But there are a lot of programs available. If you're just going to not get into serious work and try and make a living with your computer, Puppy is probably the right choice to get started on, at least. I think it's a great little operating system. And again, when you push the menu button, you'll see some things that are familiar, some that aren't perhaps, but they have pop-off things. All of these were created with this PupSnap screen capture program. That's where all of these came from, on that old 8-year-old netbook. And again, you have fun, which would be games, multimedia, which would be your video players and so on. Help, and shutdown, things that you're familiar with. So this is the browser that I chose in Puppy, and it's called Google Iron, which is Chrome, and it's a very secure version of Chrome. But when you install it, you can sign into your Google account, which I did here, and everything is available to you just like you would be running it on any computer. This is the built-in email program, and I went ahead and put one of my email accounts on here, and it works just fine. Very similar to Thunderbird, but it will work with virtually any of the email suppliers that are out there. And then I decided I wanted to put KeyPass on it. Well, obviously I didn't think KeyPass was going to be one of the programs that were built into it, but you can, through the use of a program called Wine, and I will talk more in depth about Wine later. But Wine is an interface that allows Linux programs to run Windows programs. And easy enough, there is a KeyPass Windows download you can get. And so if you install that with Wine, and you will see that Wine is open down here. So that's what I needed to open my KeyPass. And almost any computer I go to, you'll see that these are just some of my email accounts that I keep track of, so I don't have all of the passwords memorized. So I needed KeyPass. So I'm going to show you why Puppy is a little more difficult to deal with in regards to some of the Windows exe programs. So if I want to run KeyPass, I go to the File menu, and then I have to hit Control-H to show the hidden files, and these are the hidden files. Then I go down to Wine and click on Wine, and then I know that Wine told me to install that on the C drive of this computer, which I did. So you click on that, and then you need to click on Program Files, and you'll see there's KeyPass right here, so you click on that, and there is the exe for KeyPass, and you click on that, and lo and behold, it opens up the KeyPass window. You fill in your master password, and it takes you right into KeyPass. Lots of little extra strokes here. The other distributions, you can get a version of KeePass that just installs and runs like you would normally run it in Windows or in Mac. So the next distribution we want to talk about is a program called Mint. Mint is one of the most popular Linux distributions today, and it probably acts more like a Windows program than any of the other programs out there. This particular version, Linux Mint 17, came out May 31st of this year, and they say down here that they will support it until 2019. So 5 years. But in the meantime, they will be updating it, and new versions will again have 5 years. So you'll be working on Mint for the rest of your computer life if you want to, for free and up to date. So this program, Mint, was installed on this same little netbook. This is a 32-bit version of it, and when you open up, and I put it on from a live CD and then installed it onto the hard drive of this little netbook. Had to partition a drive and format it into a Linux format, which is not all that difficult. There are certainly step-by-step instructions on the internet that you'd be able to follow fairly easily. But it has a welcome screen, as does Windows and Apple and all those guys. And if you click down here, it says show this screen at startup. If you uncheck that, it won't show it anymore. But first time you open it, here's what you see. New features, and if you're an old Mint user, then you want to see the new features. You don't really care because you've never seen it before. Important information, that's legal stuff. Again, it's free, so there's not a whole lot of legal stuff. You just can't hold them responsible for anything you do. And you can't copy their work either. A user's guide in a PDF format, automatic restore thing, software manager, we'll talk about that in a second, and a chat room and forums and tutorials and on and on and on. Pretty normal stuff. They ask for donations because, again, all this stuff is free, and there's a lot of people spend a lot of their personal time on it, and this allows them to buy equipment to do testing and so forth. But anyhow, the software manager is interesting. It would bring up this particular window, and on here again it's sorted by categories, and featured ones, and internet, and sound and video, accessories like calculators and stuff, and all kinds of games, and office programs, graphics, system tools, fonts, science and education, programming. This one says all packages, and these packages install directly into Mint very quickly, and without using Wine, as I had to in Puppy. So I did get KeePass and I did get Dropbox without any additional things to download or fiddle with. All packages. There are 45,366 packages available for Linux Mint 17. I would hope that that would cover most everyone's needs. Should be able to find anything you need there. Again, they have a menu button which will pop up and bring up things. Here you'll see that's the Firefox icon. Here's for files, and here's your dreaded DOS little terminal. Over here, who signed in. This is showing we're on a wireless. That also used to be a problem with Linux. Couldn't get connected to your wireless networks and whatever. Even my little 8-year-old netbook just found the adapter in the computer and found the network without any problem at all. Volume, this one's showing the battery. There's my Dropbox, which opens automatically there. Time and so on. So pretty familiar to those of you using Windows and even Apple. So we've been talking about just 2 of the distributions, and there are many, hundreds of distributions, different versions of Linux that are for PC use. So if you go to, and again this is Wikipedia and there is a link to it, Debian based, and there are several different main versions of Linux, and then they trunk off from there. As you can see, there's some of that schematics of that, and some of the different versions and what they specialize in. And this top one, 64 Studio, is about video production. All different kinds. This goes on for pages and pages. Read those first articles in the beginning of this presentation before you take a look at this. You really, unless you have a very specific need for something, you don't need to look here. Or you want to be entertained, then you can look here. Try to use Linux without installing it, and that certainly is my wholehearted recommendation. Do not install Linux until you're comfortable with running it and you are sure that that's what you want to do. So you can make or purchase a live, and live means that you can run the operating system from it, either a CD, DVD, depending on the size of it. The puppy went on a CD without any problem at all, and lots of room for storage. Mint is 1.2, 1.3 gigs. Installed, it's close to 3 gigs. On a DVD, that leaves you a couple gigs for storage if you're going to leave it on the DVD, running it live off of the DVD. Or you can put it on a flash drive, and you can get big flash drives these days for not a lot of money. So you can run it any one of those ways. They also, all of the people, Mint and Puppy and whatever, you can buy a CD from them for $10 or so, and you don't have to make your own. But we'll talk about making your own, because it's a fairly easy process. There's a link on the sites to those that allow you to make a live CD, including Puppy and Mint. With Puppy, you don't need to know whether you're 32 or 64-bit. It's just one. With Mint, you have a choice between 32 and 64-bit. You download the ISO file, and we'll tell you where to go from there. The thing that worries most people about doing a live CD is having to get into the BIOS of the computer. And the BIOS is the interface between the hardware and the software in your computer. And that's where you change the boot order. And if there is a problem with computers today, and it doesn't matter whether it's Windows or Linux or whatever, boot problems are an issue. But if you follow the instructions and do the right thing, you shouldn't have any problem at all. In some cases, you're going to need to change the boot order if you're going to boot off of a USB thumb drive. Typically, the computers are set from the factory to boot off of your CD first. If there's nothing in the CD, then they'll look at the hard drive. And depending on the age and whatever, then they'll look for a USB after that. But we're going to talk just a smidge about getting in there and changing that order yourself. I recommend that you do not make any changes until you have read the following. How to access the BIOS setup utility. This article is pretty good and goes into the basics of it. And I've looked at it on several of my computers to do just that, for putting in Linux. And BIOS looks different on each one a little bit. So good idea to read this article first. And this has only to do with BIOS. It has nothing to do with whether it's Windows 7 or XP or Mac Tiger. It doesn't matter. It has to do with the BIOS that is in the computer. Who built it, what version, so on. Okay, here's a picture of, and most computers, to get into the BIOS, and it'll say it on the splash screen. That's the screen that comes up before it goes to the Windows screen. And if you look at it closely, you'll see it says to enter BIOS, press, and it's typically F2, F3, F12, delete. Those are the major ones. But it'll tell you which one it is. Usually it's so fast though you'll miss it the first time. So my strategy is I push all 4 of those keys at the same time when I start up the computer, and then I'll be able to see which one it's supposed to do. Anyhow, you'll open up the BIOS to the main screen, and you'll see a little tab up in the upper left there that says main, and everything here is DOS based, so you use the keyboard to get around. Your mouse is not functional here, and you need to use the arrow keys and the function keys and plus or minus keys. So we want to get over to the boot options is where we want to go. So that's this tab, and it tells you the order that it's going to boot, and we're going to talk a little later about EFI, which basically is hard disk. So this one is set up to boot from the hard disk first, second, which really is first, then the CD, and then a removable, and then from LAN. So what we need to do is we need to change the order that they're going to boot in, and they're going to consider in this case a removable drive as a hard disk. So if you have, you press on this and enter here, it says these are hard drives, and this is a USB removable drive. So we want to move that up to the first boot device, and that's done by using the plus. In most cases you have to also press the space or the shift key at the same time to move. In this case we want to move the scan disk up to boot from that. So earlier I said we were going to talk about EFI, Extensible Firmware Interface. Obviously something that was designed by Intel. And the new computers running Windows 8 run UEFI, which is very different, and it was put together by Microsoft and Intel, and you can't change the boot unless Microsoft tells you you can change the boot. They have to give special instructions and whatever. Now, there are a couple of the large distributions of Linux, Ubuntu and Mint and so on, that have gotten permission from Microsoft to use a code to allow it to boot from their live CDs. Puppy won't do it. Tried to put Puppy onto a Windows 8 computer and it laughed. This is a little worrisome. I'm concerned that Intel and Microsoft have a little too much sway over what can and can't be put on your computer. But that's for another session, I guess. So what I'm saying here is if you have a newer computer and you want to try Linux on it, Windows 8 in particular, they have changed, and it really is different than BIOS now. It's UEFI rather than BIOS. We've had some people question whether you could put Linux onto the newer computers. And the answer is yes. A little more difficulty in things and whatever. This article could explain it to you if you're so interested. And there should be a little asterisk up here, and I forgot to put it up there. So there is a link to this if you want to read it. If you need some good reading material to fall asleep some evening, this is perfect for you. Okay, we're back to that little netbook, that little 8-year-old netbook. And I actually installed Linux Mint on it, on the hard drive. And when you do that, it sets up what's called a grub bootloader. I don't know where they get all these names. Anyhow, it allows you, when you turn the computer on, you get this particular screen, the grub screen. And it says, what do you want to do? Do you want to boot Linux or do you want to boot Microsoft XP Home? And you use the arrow keys up and down to highlight what operating system you want to boot to. Automatically installed. Getting it out of there is, if you ever decide to uninstall it, a little more complicated, but again, not that difficult to do. So if all of that seems a little challenging, I would just suggest you go ahead and make yourself a live CD or DVD. Most computers are set actually to boot from the optical drive, your CD, DVD drive first. So make a CD, put it in there, run it live, and see whether you think it's something you want to go further with. When you're running from a CD, it is slower than it would be running either from a USB thumb drive if it's a current fast one, or certainly from an installed version on your hard drive, either or. But I would strongly suggest you start with a live CD. And how do you do that? You go to the Linux site that you want to try. If it has a live CD ISO file, download the ISO file, and then you're going to want to burn it to either a CD or a DVD. And the best burning software I have run into is a program called CD Burner XP. I know XP, old. Yeah, it's old, but they keep updating it. It was updated this year. There have been 30 updates to it since I first started using this thing. It does the best job of burning the ISO file of anything I've found. It's free. Again, there's a link here to it. You can find it. And, you're going to download it from File Hippo, one of my favorite places. Top window is what comes up when you start the program. And this is what you want, burn ISO file. And the other thing is, when you go to burn it, you need to make sure that you do not close the disk. And that will allow you to save programs and data and whatever to the disk. That's one of the options. And these are actually the options that when you push on the little gear button, you can see that there's lots of options to have. But when you click on this burn ISO, the only thing that you need to make sure that is not checked is to close the disk. Okay, if you're going to put it on a USB thumb drive, there are two programs that I'd recommend. This program, you download the ISO file. You also download this free universal USB installer and just follow the program, and it'll tell you locate the file that you want to put on the thumb drive, the ISO file, what thumb drive you want to use, how much persistence space you're going to leave, and that's space for storing things. The limitation here is going to be 4 gigs on the thumb drive, because FAT32, which is the file system you want to format this thing in, the largest file it'll deal with is 4 gigs. So you don't have that limitation on a CD, and on your hard drive you can have, this stores everything as a file, individual things in a large file. On the hard drive you can have several of those. So if you're going to store a lot of stuff, you probably need to go beyond that. Or, not going to complicate this too much, there is a format for Linux that will allow you to do bigger files. This is the other program to install a ISO on a USB thumb drive. This one works well with Mint. That's how I put it on a thumb drive, and it worked great. I'm just talking about storage a little bit. If you CD, DVD, make sure they're not finalized so you have open space to store things. On USB you're in FAT32 as opposed to some of the newer file systems that allow files bigger than 4 gig. And then if you store it on a hard drive, it'll be in the ext4, which is a Linux format, and there's no limit on size. Okay, so what kind of programs are available for Linux? And there are bazillions of them. This particular thing here is from Linux.com, and it goes into, it's got 142 pages with 25 on each page, over 12,000 of these things. These will go on virtually almost any Linux distribution. Cups, we're going to come back and talk about cups, but there's a lot of programs here. Here they list the newest, coolest ones. This is Wine that I talked to you about, and it really, once you understand it, it really is not that difficult to deal with. Again, it's free, and it basically will allow you to run any Windows exe program on a Linux system. There's their downloads. And this is a list of programs that they know for sure it will work with. There's 25 on a page, and there are 494 pages of programs that they've checked running Wine with. So should be enough to take care of most of your needs, I would think. And again, you can search for them by category, by license, by name, by however you want to search for them in Wine. So Cups, I mentioned Cups, and Cups is a program that allows printers to run with Linux. And this particular slide you're looking at here, I just chose Canon bubble jets because I did. These are the bubble jets that'll work with the Cups program in Linux, and there are a lot, most. But you can run into, like I did, one of my printers is a Epson Workforce 840, pretty much of a commercial printer, and it wasn't covered under Cups, so I went to Epson directly and asked for Linux drivers for that particular machine, and it had the complete set of drivers. Then it had just the generic driver, it had a PC fax driver, it had scan drivers, and so on, everything that you would need. So typically it's not the problem that it once was, getting a peripheral to run no more than Windows. Windows today, sometimes what ran on 7 won't run on 8. So anyhow, a consideration you need to give, though, before you start looking at using Linux full-time. Security. You'll hear a lot of people say that Linux is much more secure than Windows and Mac, and they're 100% correct. But that doesn't mean that it's 100% secure. There are always people looking to find a way to steal your things. So there's a whole section here on how to secure your Linux installation, starting with your router, so your eyes, ears to the outside world. This one says the 80 best Linux security applications, and that goes into things like KeePass is included in there. So anyhow, it's a list of programs that you might want to consider. Whoops, and we went right past that. If you're really, really, really concerned about security, there's a Linux distribution called Tails. And this is actually was developed for the government. It uses Tor networks, and it really is pretty much state-of-the-art. So if any of you are planning to do illicit things, or you just don't want anybody to know what you're doing, and I can understand that, this is where you want to go. Tails. And I just included this. Almost all the major manufacturers do have computers that they build that come with Linux rather than Windows or Apple, Mac. This particular one, as you can see, is pretty high-end. It's an i7 notebook with 8 gigs of 1600 megahertz RAM. Big stuff. It sells for I think around $1,300, and they've got several of them in the line. But Linux is not that far out of mainstream. And I skipped right past the end of the show. Going to be showing movies at the presentation, and you'll find links to the movies on the forum. Thanks for watching. I hope that you'll at least give Linux a try one of these days.